game in November of 2014 it was. I bought a divided jersey, Ohio State on one half and Michigan on the other half. The only thing I learned from that is everybody hates that jersey. I wore it one time, it's in the closet, and it's forever gone. So now I've crossed the Alabama LSU line, and it's as I could probably tell from some of my thumbs down, it's great to be out of Alabama. And my wife Holly and I are really loving Baton Rouge. So I've been here 5 months now, and whoops, my wife just took my watch. She needed it today. 5 months and 4 days, I think it is. There's a story to that, but that'll be later. So off to a great start. I figured I'd start off with just telling you a little bit about where we are in the reorganization. As you know, Dr. Roos and I were both hired on November 4th, I think was the date, and we started on November 17th. So we've been off to a fast start and drinking from lots of fire hoses. I did not, when I applied for this job, I applied to be president of LSU, and during the process had a discussion behind the scenes with the board members. I interviewed on a Thursday, had what I thought was a great interview. Apparently it was. I'm here today. And had a discussion with the board that night about, well, you know, would you consider what would you think about if we were to split the roles and into a president for the LSU system and a chancellor for the Baton Rouge campus? And I said, I'm open to that. Everybody has strengths and weaknesses. And one thing that was apparent to me from afar is that this university is huge. It's gigantic. And, you know, I didn't even appreciate that from Alabama, just how big this place is. I think you from afar, you think it's about the same. Alabama has about 40,000 undergraduate students on campus, just a little bit more than this, but it's really just the one campus for Tuscaloosa. There's UAB and UAH, but they operate under separate presidents. So that was the first thing that really struck me during that process. And so asked who the other person might be. They introduced me to Dr. Roos. We met at 7 a.m. that Friday morning, and they essentially put us in a room with an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper and said, you two come up with a plan as to how you'd like to do this. And Dr. Roos and I hit it off immediately. He's a great guy. We have very complementary expertise, as you can probably tell from our backgrounds if you've read about us. He's, for the most part, a lifelong Louisianan, had served as president at McNeese State here in the state, comes from an economics background. I, on the other hand, as you heard, I come from a pharmaceutical chemistry background, health professions, and I've been at Michigan, Alabama, and now LSU. I'm steeped in research and education. From an undergraduate perspective, taught drug delivery, it's called, in the College of Pharmacy, to teach kids that want to be pharmacists how to go about making tablets and capsules and what that means in terms of their performance once we pop it in the mouth. And then from a graduate perspective, taught drug metabolism. So I've, having been at Michigan is a huge university as well, but a little bit different structure-wise. On the main campus in Ann Arbor, they have, and I'm sorry to the cameraman, I'm pacing. But they have 19 schools and colleges, 7 health professions colleges. So being dean of pharmacy there with the other 6 health professions, really got to see the inner workings of perhaps the biggest, largest academic medical center in the U.S., and that was really a great experience for me. Didn't get a lot of experience at the undergraduate level, which is why Alabama really fit nicely into my next step in my career. There I oversaw admissions. You're probably hearing about how many Louisiana students we lose to the University of Alabama because of scholarships and things. I'm sorry. We'll fix that. That's one of my first goals as we get going. But I say that all just to let you know that Dr. Roos and I come from a very strong academic and research background. He comes from a strong academic background in economics and very tightly tied in with the state as well. And so the way we've integrated and set up our divided the system, I think taps into those strengths. So Dr. Roos, as system president, oversees government relations. So everybody across the campuses that's in government relations reports up to him, which means that all of our interactions with the state legislature the governor of the state, and things like that. We funnel those through him. He also oversees athletics. We kind of fought over that one a little bit, but I am a big college sports fan, but got it to a place where we're both happy about it. But he's got the football team, the baseball team, softball, gymnastics, volleyball, you name it, all the way down the line. And he's also got a small communications team at the system level as well to make sure that we're collecting all of the information that comes from the 8 campuses across the system, and then blowing that message out to a larger audience from a system level. So his direct reports are me as Chancellor of the re-envisioned flagship, if you will. The chancellors at Alexandria, Shreveport, and Eunice report into him as well. And on July 1st, we'll have LSU New Orleans. That chancellor will report into Dr. Roos as well. For me, I oversee the Baton Rouge, the flagship campus. That includes the A&M campus, which we're sitting on today. It includes the Agricultural Center. It includes Pennington Biomedical. It includes the Health Science Centers in Shreveport and New Orleans. All, well within my background and strength of experiences as well. So we've been dividing and conquering, I think. We're 5 months into it, but there's a lot to be done. I'll focus here on sort of what we're doing next. Combining the 5 campuses that I oversee, we had accreditation through SAC-COC at the A&M campus. We also had a separate SAC-COC accreditation in Shreveport at the Medical Center campus, and a SAC-COC accreditation at the Health Science Center in New Orleans as well. So the first thing to do is to work with SAC-COC, our accrediting body, and make sure that we get covered on the same umbrella and at a very high priority level, maintain accreditation, which we've done. So we submitted our documents to SAC-COC on March 15th. We're expecting to hear back a first set of comments from them in June. We've had one meeting with them prior to submitting our documents. They're very supportive of what we're doing. They've termed it a reorganization as opposed to some of the larger terms that tick off needs to submit to the Department of Education, like merger and acquisition. So it's a reorganization. So we expect to hear some comments back in June. There'll probably be one iteration of responses back to them. And then the SAC-COC board, we hope, will give us final approval and accreditation for all the campuses combined in December of this year. And that process is going very, very well. Really happy with that. The other thing we're doing is trying to make sure that we're integrating and creating efficiencies across the 5 campuses. As you've probably seen, maybe some of you are serving on committees. We've established 28 committees with members from New Orleans, Shreveport, the Ag Center, A&M campus, and Pennington, to talk about all the various things that we need to do. So you can imagine promotion and tenure process for faculty is a big one. With 5 different campuses, they all have their own established systems, and we've got to figure out how we do that in a more integrated way. We went through that just a couple weeks ago. You've probably seen some social media posts with folks celebrating their promotions now. So I think we've got a good our hands on that. We've got to think about grants. We also have grants that are being submitted from each of these 5 institutions. We have different grants software in some places than we do others. So we've got to figure out what that looks like going forward. But we've got to be careful during that process. We've got some grants, COBRA grants they're called, which are assigned to institutions that don't necessarily have a bigger funding level as their comparators. By combining, we don't want to lose the ability of New Orleans and Shreveport, for example, to apply for Pennington to get COBRA grants. So we've learned during the process that we can do this. We can report to National Science Foundation, NSF HERD survey it's called, our overall research dollars, but not give up the ability to have our own DUNS number, which is a number which the federal government uses in terms when you're applying for grants and receiving grant funds and things like that. So we think we've accomplished that and maintained our ability to still compete for these COBRA grants and some of the other things that are really a necessary part of our research infrastructure. So it goes from promotion and tenure to research infrastructure. I've also had some meetings about tech transfer and intellectual property. We have different systems set up around for that. And you've probably also seen that we're starting to talk about purchasing. One of the things that I was proud of we got done while I was at University of Alabama was we worked with Auburn University to negotiate our library contracts. So with Elsevier, Wolters Kluwer, and some of the other bigger, Springer, some of the other providers. If the University of Alabama and Auburn can collaborate on something, I'm pretty certain that we should be able to do the same thing with our 5 campuses. So, and those are some of the efficiencies that I'm talking about. When if you can start to leverage the size of one LSU and start to negotiate those, that helps us free up money that we can use strategically to invest in LSU Online, to invest in research, to invest in more staff and more faculty and raises and everything that comes along with that. So that's part of the efficiencies that we need to think about. Communications is part of that, and ultimately, I think, if perhaps the most important one on there, which is the squishiest one, is culture. How do we get us all thinking like one university is composed to competitors? And I see that particularly between some of the health science schools. There's a Shreveport Health Science Center and there's a New Orleans Health Science Center, but we need to be, focused on the same direction, which in my mind is more biomedical research and better patient care and better health science, health professions education. So we've got 2 great teams that are doing that. In terms of the organization under me, there are 5 senior vice chancellors now. So the provost, Troy Blanchard, currently is a senior vice chancellor and provost for the university. Also have Jennifer Rood is serving as senior vice chancellor and executive director at Pennington Biomedical Research Center. And then Matt Lee, who served as acting president, is now senior vice chancellor of the Agricultural Center that we have across the state. And then the last 2 are David Guzik, who is serving as senior vice chancellor at Health Science New Orleans, and Lester Johnson as senior vice chancellor in Shreveport. And so those were some of the bigger, we had to change some titles there. Lester had previously been called a chancellor at Shreveport, and Steve Nelson, who was Dr. Guzik's predecessor at New Orleans, had been called chancellor. So we had to go through a little bit of that cultural change, but my job as chancellor now is to make sure that the 5 of us, I can tell you, are working very closely together and have our mission in mind and are aligned at what we want to accomplish. So that's the big picture of where we are from an organizational perspective. I've asked for those 28 committees to provide me with reports, recommendations by the end of this semester, sometime in May, with the idea that gives me and the executive team the ability to, over the summer, take those in and hopefully get to the point by fall we're talking about what the vision is and how we can take in those recommendations and start making smart steps to move things forward. It's a big job. I think Dr. Roos and I always agree that I'm not quite sure how Dr. Tate before us did this job. For one person, it's just quite frankly too much. I'm sure you see Dr. Roos talking about athletics on a regular basis. I know he was in Shreveport yesterday. I'll be in New Orleans later this week. He's been in Eunice and Alexandria, and I've traveled the world as well, or at least the state of Louisiana. It was just too big a job, and I think one of the other things that we're hoping to accomplish by this division of labor, if you will, is having more eyes and more direct interaction with the teams that are doing the work. So if you don't see the president but once every 3 or 4 years, it becomes difficult to really feel connected to the university. So we're hoping to accomplish that. So I think that's all going very well. Here they've asked me to talk about LSU Online. So I visited the offices. How long ago was that? About a month ago, something like that. I'm still on my walking tour of the university. I was supposed to be at the College of Education this morning, but had to cancel it for another arising duty that came up. But I'm well on my way to doing about a 90-minute tour with each one of those, where get a little bit of feel for the geography of the campus and where these colleges are. I get about 15 to 20 minutes with each one of the deans, another 15 to 20 minutes with the department chairs and other senior leadership of the colleges, a little bit of a tour, and then finishing up generally with 20 to 30 minutes of Q&A with the faculty and staff, just to let them hear some of what you just heard, as well as answer questions. I hope to have those done by the end of May, but that's become pretty difficult with some of the other challenges that are going on right now. I had a kidney stone last week, so I missed a few meetings. If you've never had one, don't. It was an interesting process. It's only the second time I've had them in my life, and I don't wish it upon anyone, but I felt at least entitled to miss a few meetings because of that. So for LSU Online, I think it's an exciting time for online education. The people in the room that are driving that and doing this every day, you know that a lot better than I do. I think when we think about continuing education, online education, they're just, tremendous opportunities. And we see a lot of universities leaning into that now. When I oversaw the Office of Technology Innovation, Technical Innovation and Digital Education at Alabama, OTIDE as we named it. We saw a pretty good growth in a number of our online programs, and there we accomplished that by making sure that the incentives for faculty to develop online programs were aligned, so that if they had to put in the effort and do the additional teaching, what was the benefit back to the faculty or back to the department? And for example, in the humanities, that can often mean it's difficult to come up with grant funds in the humanities, travel funds, or even to publish books and things like that, some of the subvention fees. If you're doing online education, you can bring some of that revenue back into the individual faculty member of the department. That allows the department to be incentivized to do some of the things to build online education, because it helps them build their scholarly base and their teaching base in their specific discipline. So need to understand more about that here at LSU. I've just really touched the very surface of that right now. I can tell by the numbers that we have in terms of online students that we're doing pretty well. There's always room for growth, and that's one of the things I'll be talking about with the leadership of LSU Online. I'd be thrilled to hear what ideas that the people in the room have for that as well. We have to remain in growth mode for online and continuing education. I think that's driven by a lot of things. Artificial intelligence is certainly pushing in us in this regard right now. We've moved from artificial intelligence that helped us answer smart questions on Google to these incredible resources now that can really do a lot of the work. I used Claude for the first time last week, and if you've never tried Claude, it's just an incredible thing. I have to write some graduation speeches, so give Claude a few good cues, and it's off to the races, and then you've got something that, as an individual, you can edit and finalize to your own message. But AI has made its way into continuing ed and online education as well. I know we've got, at least at Alabama, we had some courses that were completely taught online with some AI behind the scenes. And I think we have to think about that as a way to help students that are taking online courses. One of the things I was working on in AI at my previous institution as well is we need AI tutors. We've all been students at some point in our lives, and we know very well that 2 a.m. fevered pitch the night before test, where you wish you'd asked the professor question X, Y, or Z, but the professor's not up at 2 a.m. And having AI and tools like that can really help us, not just what we're offering on our campus courses, but what we're doing online as well. So what I'm really looking for this group for is to give me some ideas. I'm all ears right now for the next several months for my entire time here as Chancellor. But you're the boots on the ground in the weeds, and you know what's working and what's not working. And I always think about things in three big buckets. What are we doing today that we need to do more of? What are we doing today that we'd be better off stopping as soon as we can? And what are some of our peer aspirant universities doing that we haven't adopted yet, that we could bring to LSU to make us even better at what we're doing in online and continuing education? And This group knows that better than I ever will. And so I'm really looking for you to work with your teams, to work with your supervisors, with your leaders, with the everyone that runs LSU Online on a daily basis to let those ideas percolate up. And I'm a risk taker. I love a good idea. I love trying a bunch of things and not afraid to try something and let it fail. If you're going to be successful in your career, as I heard some of the prior talk, then you're going to have to take some risk and maybe fail along the way. I've failed so many times I can't count it anymore. But I look at those failures as opportunities to learn and do something better the next time. So really ask you to take that culture on in your own organizations. Think about how to dream big, how to perhaps fail big, and how to keep growing LSU Online. And thank you for all that you do is the last part of my message before I open it up for questions and answers. What you do is so vitally important to this university. We have a lot of universities out there struggling today. You see it even within the state of Louisiana where enrollments are dropping, the demographic cliff is coming, people are engaging more online now than they ever have before, and it's subtracting from some of the value of what we do from an on-campus, in-person experience. So you can make what's going on, what we're doing on LSU Online, as close to that as possible, and we'll all be successful. So happy to take some questions. Thanks for being here, and I hope that I kept you awake. It looks like you just had lunch, so. Questions? Yes, sir.
Name and role, please.
Hi, I'm Nick Leo. I'm a data architect with LSU Online, so I do data processing and things. Thanks so much for being here. I want to ask you a question about one of the tensions, I guess, I see in education these days especially. You know, we have a lot of resources that we invest in what I would call the economic engines of the university, you know, engineering programs, business college. I'm a product of that. I went to the business college here at LSU, so, you know, that's all very important stuff, and it's easy to kind of measure the success of that in quantitative terms. But one thing that's important to me personally is the cultural engine aspect of the university, you know? So what do we provide culturally to our state, to our community? And it seems like there's a tension there because it doesn't really bring revenue, you know, it doesn't produce high value economic jobs necessarily, but at the same time, it's important to kind of our local community here. So we've got a world-class French program. We've got a literature program with a great history. I've had great philosophy course experiences here at LSU. So I was hoping you could speak a little bit to your philosophy on that and how we kind of address that tension between these two kind of initiatives.
Thanks for the question. Thanks for asking it. I think you know, one of the things that we're all aware of right now is this divide that's emerged and perhaps still growing between the communities around us and the public perceptions of higher ed and what we're doing. And it's one of the more difficult things that we've got to really broach. It's a long-term process. I don't think we have the trust, perhaps, that we did 10 years ago, even 5 or 2 years ago. And it's because the culture around us is shifting as well. When I think about the interaction of the university with the communities that surround us, I mean, there's some great, LSU Online is a great one. Your reach is throughout the state and even outside the state as a front door, if you will, to the university in terms of what we value in terms of education, the opportunities that we can provide to individuals to advance themselves and take the next step there in their career or personal lives. Also think about the Agricultural Center. If you haven't really had any time to look at what we're doing at our Ag Center, it's just tremendous. Really learned a lot about that. Matt Lee, who's leading that group, is doing a fabulous job. You know, we have extension agents in all 64 parishes. I've met with sugarcane growers of the state in my time here, and they're thankful, really, for everything that we do in the extension services, whether it be sugarcane, rice. I think 50% of the sugarcane that's grown here in the state of Louisiana, it comes from a varietal produced from LSU's Ag Center. The same thing is true for rice. A lot of the rice that comes out of the state of Louisiana comes from varietals, germlines that have been produced here in the Ag Center. So in those worlds, in LSU Online and the Ag Center, we have LSU dressed in purple and gold like you are today, out there on farms, out there in the communities, out there in K-12, and really leading that charge. We got to do more of that. I was really excited to see just last week, that Pennington Biomedical is now partnering with the Ag Center because we have these fingers out into the network of the 64 parishes. If we can get Pennington and some of our other disciplines, the humanities, which you've referred to tap into some of those resources, it's a great way to take what we're doing and learning here on campus and sharing that with the communities and culture around us. The last part of your question, I think, is more directed to, we make a lot of investments in STEM, right? Engineering, geography, chemistry, sciences, even the medical schools, those drive a lot of our research rankings. And one of the things I've been charged with, quite frankly, is to move us into the top 50 from a research perspective. So yes, if we're going to do that, we've got to increase our productivity in the STEM sciences. That means the papers that we're writing, the presentations that we're making at national and international professional conferences, and grants that we write and bring in the door. But it's bigger than that, because the other thing that we're trying to achieve now is to become a member of the American Association of Universities, AAU. And that's a much more difficult or higher mountain to climb. And you can't climb that mountain without investing in the humanities, the philosophy, classics, French that you mentioned, across the board. The universities that are recognized as AAU members have faculty in the humanities that are publishing books on a regular basis. If you look at the metrics for AAU, it's the number of books published, it's the number of faculty that receive national and international awards, it's the number of citations that come from those scholarly works that we're producing. And not just books, it can be symphonies, it can be dance, it can be theater, it can be anything like that. So we've got to find a way to raise all boats at the same time. And I've certainly, one of my more profound experiences, I did a tour of dramatic arts about 6 weeks ago. I think it was right after I came here to LSU Online, and really, sat in the studio. We had a small symphony group and two operatic singers up at the front of the room. It just blew me away. And we can't be everything to everyone, but we should be able to be recognized for what we're doing in the arts as well. So, and that takes focus and vision from myself, as well as working with the dean of those groups. I just spoke with our dean there about, we, as opposed to some other universities, for example, don't put money into some of the scholarships that will bring the best musicians to LSU. We got to change that. It's not an inexpensive thing, but it's a strategic decision that you have to make if you really want to be recognized at those levels. So that's my fluffy, go Tigers answer, but that's what we have to do. And there's no way to say it any other different way. Thanks for the question.
All right, we have another question back here.
Hi there, my name is Jack. I'm a student success coach with LSU Online. Like you, I can kind of relate to being divided. My wife and I both went to grad school at Alabama, so weird to wind up over here a little bit. But my question's kind of short and simple, but how do you think, because I deal with this day to day with students, but how do you think, especially from your position and top down, that we can really remove the stigma or maybe some of the negative stereotypes that go with students receiving an online education compared to in person? Because there's still kind of that idea that, online's not as good or as valuable as being in person. I know the degree reads the same thing, but still I have students ask me that across all generations every day. So. Yeah,
I mean, it's a great question. And boy, just like we talked about, repairing the compact between the communities that surround us in higher ed, it's changing the perceptions of what an online degree means versus an on-campus degree. will take time, and it ultimately relies on the graduates that we produce. To be honest with you, if we produce great graduates that have the skills, they will go out there, they will get jobs, they will excel at their jobs, and they will show up as successful alumni of the university. There's no greater example or no greater selling point than the student that came through an online Bachelor of Arts, Bachelor of Science, Master's program, PhD, or whatever it might be, that can say, I went to LSU, I had a great experience, I got this job, and I'm off and running on a great career. And that's what I think about, too, when we sometimes think about our websites, our communication teams, and things like that. I love to put out, and if you look, follow me on Instagram, lsu.chancellor. That's serious. Do it right now. We put out lots of personal interest stories with students that are doing small research projects or things like that, or we had a research day recently, or books that have been published, faculty awards, and things like that. But when you think about our online presence from a website perspective, Instagram, Facebook, I'm not on X or some of the others that I know exist now, but what it's really about is recruiting students here. We survive, our main job is to provide education, healthcare, and do research. We are a knowledge economy, right? We produce knowledge, we share knowledge, we collect knowledge, but we are a knowledge economy. And so to me, to finish answering your question, it's about finding those successful graduates that we have and using them, asking them to step in and help us promote what they got out of the experience, because they are our best ambassadors to change that message. Thanks for the question.
Thank you. All right, we have one over here, right in the middle. Chancellor, right here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. My name is John Neal. I'm Associate Director of Program Management and Strategy here at LSU Online. You mentioned about one of your buckets were looking at what our competitors are doing and maybe mimicking. My previous job, we used to call that case projects, where you copy and steal everything. That's what we called it. So what I want to ask is, Cappy talked about pathways for student coming in. And one of the things that I see is that a lot of the 4 years are collaborating with 2-year universities now in the form of 2+1s, articulation agreements, and things of that nature. What I'm seeing in my job, and I work with LSU E, is that we have a lot of students from LSU E that do not come to LSU A&M because the courses don't exactly line up one-to-one, right? And so I would think that any 2-year institution in the state of Louisiana would want to come to LSU A&M. But we're seeing that there's a lot of other colleges outside of the state that will collaborate with those 2-year institutions where they will line up, and in some cases, their full associate's degree would transfer over into that 4-year institution. And we have a small issue with that where those courses are not exactly lining up here. So my question would be, do you have any experience in that, and do you have any notions or ideas on how we can have those 2 years and how we can have those associate degrees transfer over into A&M?
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, I do have some experience in that. Actually, at my prior institution as well, I'm trying not to say those words anymore. We developed a state articulation agreement, and you can go online. It's called the STARS program in that state. And essentially, it was a multi-year process just to go through and in a very direct way, look at the courses that were taught at a community college or some of our peers, get it on a single website, figure out where that integrates in the curriculum of our school, so that a student, if they were thinking about transferring from whatever university it might be, Baton Rouge Community College, they can log online to one site and see that they don't have to get somebody to answer the questions. They can see, okay, I took English 101, English 102, those transfer directly in. And hopefully every course transfers. That's not always the case. We know there's some issues there, particularly with, and that oftentimes happens in math and some of the other areas where sometimes students need to catch up. I'd say it starts with articulation agreements, because quite frankly, and we've got to get better at the 2+1 and or the 1+3, 1+4 programs to bring students here. One of the things that Dr. Roos and I share the message on is access and excellence. We are going to strive for excellence here at the flagship university. But that doesn't mean, that's not separated from access. We can recruit the best students here to an A&M, but we have room for all students that want to attend LSU. Now that may mean spending the first year at Eunice or Alexandria or down in New Orleans when we get UNO set up. But we've also got to integrate what we're doing from an admissions perspective as well, so that if you apply to A&M but you don't get in, and it is, I'll be frank with you, it's going to get tougher to get into A&M as we raise our standards and start to elevate what we're doing. There will be more students that don't get admitted to A&M but ultimately want to be here, to your point. So we've got to find ways, if they apply to A&M that they don't get in, we offer them an alternative where they know if they go, they take a program at Eunice or Alexandria or New Orleans or an online program, that if they do that successfully, they get a grade point average of 3.0 or something, that we will directly admit them to the A&M campus after 1 or 2 years of success, whatever that looks like. And to do that, we've got to be sure that when they're taking those classes at the other campus or online, that they directly transfer in to the A&M campus. Because what we don't want to do, the worst thing we can do is bring a student in, have them enroll in courses that don't help them get out the door with a degree. And so we can't, just like we don't like to waste time, students don't like to waste time, and time is money, as we all know, and tuition isn't cheap. I have 3 adult children that I just finished paying it all, so I know very well how much it costs. And I think that we owe it to the state of Louisiana and the communities around us to keep tuition as low as we can, to make sure that the TOPS program stays in, but also to make sure that when a student walks in the door, they walk out of it with a degree. And we had a question from student success from this side of the room. I'm really strongly engaged and want to see us get better at student success. Our retention to the second year just here on main campus was only 85% last year. We were at 90% at my prior university last year. So we got to get better at that. And that's not just recruiting better students, but it's also making sure that when they walk in the door, we have better advisors, we have supplemental instruction, we've got tutors, we have everything that they need to be successful. And then we have software that's working behind the scenes to help us pick them out at their first midterm grade or midterm test that didn't go well, to get them in and get that help. Because some of the students that need the help most don't know that they need it and don't know how to find it.
Awesome. Okay, I think we have time for one more question. Is that okay, Chancellor? All right. So over here to the right.
Hi, I'm Prashant Betala. I'm one of the Salesforce developers here at OCE. So I have a question about the international community here. So what is your visioning for positioning LSU as a global university, and how do we plan to strengthen our global presence?
Sorry, when you have a kidney stone, you drink a lot of water. International is another really difficult area that we're dealing with from a U.S. perspective right now, with some of the changes that were made in U.S. immigrations last year, limiting visas to 4 years for students. Anybody that's been in a PhD program knows, or even an undergraduate program, 4 years is really cutting it close unless you're really on the top of your game. And then they've also changed some of the rules, as we know as well, for the fees that are required for an H-1B visa and things like that. To be a global university and online is a great way to achieve that goal. It is a great foray or another front door out into the rest of the world. Now, we're also seeing some pushbacks on that. So we've got certain countries that we're not allowed to do work in. And even, well, this group knows it better than I do. It's difficult to offer online education in some states. And you can imagine that's even more complex when you start stepping across international lines. So I'd say we have to be smart in that. In my prior experience, we looked at Germany as one example, where we were going to do some work in Germany, but the legal status in Germany just didn't make it something that we can engage in. So I think we've got to do an environmental scan, find out where that it's most permissible for online education. It's not every country. Lean into those, and then start to figure out, you know, what are the needs in those places? What do they want to take? Can we offer them from LSU Online? And I think to the bigger question, does it eventually provide us a way to get people in the door? You know, we mentioned, I think John mentioned over here doing, you know, 1-2 programs, 1-3, 1-4 programs, 2-3, 4 programs. That's a great way to get somebody in the door from a foreign country, get them interested in what we're doing from an educational perspective. If they're successful from an online perspective, it should open the door for them to, if they want to be a residential student, to try to do so. If not, they'll get a valuable degree online. But it's a tough area right now, and it's something that's changing on a daily basis, as you know very well. All right. Thank you.
Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you so much.